Hi again, everybody. John McLaughlin here, the chairman of the Iowa Firearms Coalition, and I am joined today by one of my favorite instructors in the world of firearms, Dave Laird, with DCS training down in the Phoenix, Arizona area. I've shot with Dave, taken classes, been on his range several times, so he's one of my go-to guys for all things firearms related and training related. And Dave, as I told you offline, we're working on Second Amendment protection in Iowa, and over the last 10 years, we've gone from about 40,000 concealed carry permits in the state of Iowa to now about 425,000. And I can guarantee you that the majority of those people do not have significant training. And I know you're a huge proponent of, yes, you have the right in the Second Amendment, but you also have the responsibility of having more than just a base level of training. So I'm just going to let you run with that for a bit.
Well, it's fascinating that you said 400,000 permits in the state of Iowa. How many residents do you have in the state of Iowa?
Yeah, about 2.5 million.
That's incredible. I say that because here in Arizona, we have about 350,000 active permits, but we issue them nationwide, and we have 7 million residents. I mean, we are a constitutional carry state, but that's pretty fantastic that Iowa's reached those numbers with that population rate.
Yeah, and we finally got around on the constitutional carry bandwagon and got that approved, but obviously there's still great value in having the plastic card for reciprocity and purchases and things like that.
Yeah, so as far as, even though you have constitutional carry, you have a CCW, training, I think everybody has a different idea of what training is. And I wish Adam was here because he said he had a written phrase, we ended up putting on a t-shirt that I was just like, dude, that really encompasses everything. It says, and I felt like that was something that's always rested on my heart, being a self-defense guy, that you have a duty. Like if you're going to choose to carry a firearm in your possession, whether it's just to defend yourself or you and your family, you have a duty to be proficient with it at any time, day or night, under any physical conditioning that you might be going through, more proficient than everybody else, because everyone else's lives are going to be influenced by your actions at that 1.01% chance that you're going to have to use it for self-defense. Your judgment, keeping yourself out of those situations in the first place, being able to de-escalate and get away if you can. But ultimately, when it comes time to do it, everybody around you is going to be influenced or affected, and their lives are going to be changed because you chose to defend yourself.
So I see a lot of people will take just like the basic pistol class from a local NRA instructor, and hey, I'm good. I got my 25 shots on the range or whatever it happens to be. In a perfect world, what would you like to see if you could get inside of people's brains? And I think we're wired the same way where we're training junkies, but to really tell people, here's a great path suggestion for you to go on.
Oh man. Yeah, so I usually talk about the 4 different levels of competence when it comes to anything. So the first one is you're unconsciously incompetent. That's where I want to say most Americans ride in that realm when it comes to firearms. And basically, you don't know anything about guns, and you don't realize that you don't know anything about guns.
You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, you don't know, and then somebody brings it to your attention, and you're like, hey, that sounds neat. And if you talk to gun owners, hey, how old were you when you got your first gun? And they give you an age, and how old were you when you took your first class? And very few people have ever taken a class, or it was many years ago, or it was some hunter safety or something along those lines. And so usually they go out and they buy a gun first, and then they think about holsters, and then they think about safes, and then they think about a cleaning kit. Training's usually last on the list. And I wish it was first, but I'm a big proponent of the Second Amendment. So I don't believe the government should come in and say, this is what you should do in this order.
Right.
Because then 67-year-old grandma can't meet to that requirement of that level. And I think that she's somebody who most certainly needs to be armed, because she's more likely to be victimized. So you're unconsciously incompetent. And then your buddy tells you, hey, whoa, don't point that at me. Right. Don't you know the safety rules? And you become consciously incompetent. Okay, so now you realize that you don't know anything, and you want to go sign up for that basic class that he recommended to you. And so by the time you get done with that first basic class, you become consciously competent. In other words, if you're thinking about loading your magazine, you can do it. If you're paying attention, and every now and then, maybe you put one in backwards, or you forget how to hold it, and you're like, holy crap, and someone else comes along and helps you. You're able to load it, and if you concentrate fully, you can press the trigger and you can hit paper and maybe even hit the bullseye. But if anything breaks your concentration, or you flinch, or something startles you, you end up missing. Okay, it's because it broke your concentration. And so those first 3 levels, I say, are like the most dangerous levels, and where we strive to be, guys like you and me, and we really want everyone else to be, is unconsciously incompetent.
Unconsciously competent, you mean?
Yeah, that's the one. Unconsciously competent, to where if that threatened right here, right now, neither one of us would even have to talk to each other. We would just be able to draw our pistols and put rounds on target and stop the threat, continue to search and assess for everyone else, and start organizing what we need to have done next. You get out of the store, you come over here, babe, go start the car, right. Top off my gun as needed. And so that's going to be very dynamic for your given situation. Law enforcement trained for law enforcement things, military trains for military things. And so their contingency, even after that initial threat, is far different from civilians. And so it's important that you're training with people that have knowledge and experience. Maybe military and law enforcement is good, provided that they know how to put in proper context for civilians. Because the military trains to sweep across the objective, kill everything, right. In the process, turn around, search for survivors, kill them too. Okay, that doesn't work well in the civilian world, no matter how much we like it.
Right.
So yeah, it's got to be mindful. And like you said, there's a lot of people out there that got their NRA credentials, and they hit a circle at 40 feet with so many rounds, and they got certified to teach a basic pistol class. That's shooting from the bench. That's picking it up, safe loading and unloading, and marksmanship. That's it. That's all it's ever meant for. It's all it's ever intended for. So they shouldn't be teaching you, ballistic underwater demolition or pararescue stuff.
Right. Stay in the lane, as they say.
Stay in the lane.
Yeah. Just to regress slightly, my Facebook memory today was a few years ago. I did a training event for young people, and it was actually a picture of the 4 universal firearm safety rules that were filled out by 10-year-olds. And that's like, wow, I mean, this just reinforces the fact that you can teach, children in your household or in the elementary schools how to stay safe with firearms. And certainly if we can teach a 10-year-old to memorize those laws and recite them, and after a couple-day class, write them all down and still know what they mean, certainly the rest of us ought to be able to
right.
to do that.
And so
go ahead.
A lot of folks, I think they, are just happy going to the range, putting up a piece of paper, and they practice that slow, steady marksmanship, and cost of ammunition, whatever. I mean, maybe a lot of people don't know that there is this kind of training out there still. And there's a lot of here in Arizona, anyway, you can throw a rock in any direction, hit an instructor. So it's almost like every time you go to the range, you meet a new one.
Right.
And I think some of those personalities of those folks push folks away. They're like, oh, I met another instructor today who wanted to tell me all about, whatever. And, he kind of turned me off. So like, I don't want to go train with professionals, because I sort of see that maybe that's the personality I come to expect when I show up. Yeah. I have a lot of people that show up to my classes that are nervous or hesitant, and they're like, this wasn't at all what I thought it was going to be like.
Yep.
I expected knife hands and people yelling at me, and
right.
All those things we hear about. I had one lady actually call me and said she didn't like the description of my class, because I was trying to run, when I first got started, I tried running my advanced pistol classes as fighting pistol 1, fighting pistol 2.
All right.
I wanted to try and be descriptive of, like, you're going to be fighting with your pistol. It's beyond marksmanship.
Right.
And she said, I don't want to learn how to fight with my pistol. What do you think you're going to be doing with it?
Right.
Like, what else are you going to be doing with your pistol? I mean, if you just want to learn basic marksmanship, I already have those classes. But
right.
If you're carrying it for self-defense, guess what? It's a fight. But,
jumping over to the Kyle Rittenhouse thing a while back, I have no idea the training he had, but one thing that I kept thinking as I watched that trial is, either, I saw people were donating for his defense, but I kept thinking, man, I hope this kid has got like a significant legal plan, because the rest of us could never, ever pay off the cost of defending yourself against what I would say was very aggressive and improper prosecution.
That case was amazing. I try not to pass judgment when these things happen. I try to just listen and observe. Within the first couple of days, you have really high emotions on both sides about a lot of different subjects. When it was coming to trial, I was nervous for him. I was like, he's got every single news agency reporting it a certain way. He's got the deck stacked against him. Like, this is being forced into the courtroom, despite what has come out prior to it ever getting there. And then I was happy that they had a couple of things thrown out in the early part of the trial, like his age and possession and the transportation of the firearm, getting that cleared out of the way. Ending the whole racist debate, I think, on day one, because it's a white guy with 3 white victims, because I still wasn't clear. Not that it mattered, but I still wasn't clear about who.
That's the media for you.
Who lived and who died, how many people were actually injured, how many people, what led up to this. Like, there's a lot of information that wasn't relevant. And the entire time I was thinking to myself, God, I would never put myself in that situation. And as a father of 5 boys, I was thinking, what circumstances would make it justifiable for this to be that way? Because I was thinking to myself, would I let my son be in those shoes? I was like, well, if it was our business, I'd probably pack up the business into a U-Haul, anything, of value, and leave town. What if it was my house? Okay, well, my house is my home. So I could absolutely, hey guys, go get your vests, go get your gear. This is our house. No one's coming in. We're going to protect our family. So there'd be a circumstance. But I was also curious, like, if you'd made the decision to defend your business or a friend's business and your son's going to be there, where were you the whole time?
Good point.
Because I, for one, would be the one making sure that my son never had to make that judgment call or that decision. Like, he'd be right behind me the entire time.
There you go.
And then on top of that, my 5 boys, if they went out for SF tomorrow, I have no doubt their weapons qualifications would be fine. My oldest is with 10th Mountain. My middle boy's with 25th ID, and I've got one waiting in the wings that can't wait to go. And in fact, this Christmas break, while they're home, they want to get their NRA credentials to help them with their military career. So, and all of them, I'm sure if I asked them, hey, would you ever do this? They'd be like, oh, hell no, Dad. I would never put myself in that situation. So, but in the end, I feel it was a just verdict. I was disappointed with the prosecution, even if he was being forced in that position and he had a lack of evidence. He did a poor job, even with the lack of evidence, in my humble opinion, if that makes sense. So it was just a real rodeo, start to finish. It was a real rodeo.
And just getting back to kind of the initial thought is, I know with your students, you recommend they have some kind of legal plan. Not that makes you empowered to go out and think, well, I can do, stand my ground and someone's going to pay for my defense, but just to have that backup just in case you ever needed it. Yeah.
As a civilian, I mean, we go about our daily lives, and I sort of view my pistol as my fire extinguisher. Okay. And my rifle would be my fire truck. So anytime I see smoke, I'm thinking, well, let's leave the area. Okay. You know what I mean? If you don't need that fire, I don't need to go chase down fires. I can call to get the fire department there.
Yeah.
So when would I use my fire extinguishers? Probably like when my kitchen's on fire. When would I need a fire truck? When I work for the fire department, or the fire department's no longer useful or relevant. Like, it's a zombie apocalypse, there's no fire department, I got to put a fire out in my house. That's when I'd probably want a fire truck.
Yep.
So yeah, you need to have that legal mindset. You need to understand the laws of your state. That's one of the things that we press on a lot in our CCW class, is what can you do, what are you legally allowed to do, and then what should you do? Because if you can avoid that situation and not have to come up with a justification of your actions, you're in much better shape. For example, if I go to a restaurant and I see that it's rowdy, well, then I'll probably say, hey, you know what, let's go pick another restaurant.
Yeah, exactly.
But if I'm already in the restaurant and stuff happens, well, that's unavoidable at that point.
Right.
So they're the ones that are making the decision for me. And that's more easily justifiable. It's like, hey, I was just there, and all of a sudden that broke out.
Right.
But if you see a riot going on down the road, there's news reports of it going on your radio, and you're like, hey, I think we'll just take a detour on my way home today and go to downtown Phoenix where there's a riot going on.
Yeah.
You know,
best way to avoid a gunfight is to avoid a gunfight.
Right. So, you know, context is everything. I think it's good to train with the firearm and understand, like, you know, what do I want to be, you know, unconsciously competent in what areas, your holster draw, you know, because you need to be unconsciously competent with that holster draw in your first round on target, because you actually have to wait for the criminal to do crime first.
Mm-hmm.
We don't get to preemptively shoot people.
Right.
So knowing that means I'm going to be playing catch up. That means the gun's already out, someone's already being shot, someone's already being stabbed, and it might be me. Okay, so how much time do I have to get that done? I need to know. If someone's trying to mug me, I might have different actions if I know my holster draw is 2.5 seconds versus my sub-second draw.
Right.
Okay, because I know that I'm looking for the availability of time to put myself in a position of leverage. That's really what the firearm does for you, is give you that position of leverage. And so if you have a whole slow holster draw, a fumbly holster draw, a crappy holster doesn't let you draw, if you don't carry it around in your chamber, you're stacking time to get it into play. And so in other words, it's useless for a lot of situations. So the more you can narrow that window, the quicker you can get it out and get accurate hits on target, the more unconsciously competent you become with it, the better your defensive strategies and plans are. And your overall confidence. You're like, well, I don't even have to do it. I got plenty of time to get away. I got a sub-second draw.
Right.
So then you got to think about your reloads, your transitions, your use of cover and concealment, your situational awareness, because the moment shots get fired, no one's standing still. Everybody's running. Everybody's ducking for cover.
Yep.
Everybody's on their cell phone. And, you know, people on their cell phones waving it around. You know, what does this look like from a distance?
Right.
That looks like, I mean, and it's dark out, or it's rainy, or it's snowy.
Yeah, I can tell you a real world situation. When I was back at the TV station in Iowa, we had someone trying to enter the building, and one of our camera people snuck out the back door and was given play-by-play to the cops with his cell phone. And so when the cops show up, what do? They shoot at the guy with the cell phone because they thought that was a firearm under, you know, the adrenaline dump they were all under. Yep. And fortunately, the guy mashed his grip and shot about 3 feet low and hit the light post right below the photographer. But true story, you know, under stress, you don't see things like normal.
No, it's a very confusing situation. And that's one of the reasons why, even in my EDC class or low light use of cover, the thing I'm trying to get across people is if that firearm becomes an extension of you, if you are unconsciously competent in all things, in other words, I know when it has a malfunction, I don't have to look at it, examine it, decide what kind of malfunction. Just when it doesn't go bang, I'm able to feel what's going on with it and fix it. It clears up your eyes and your ears and allows you to start assessing everything else going on. Because that's what you're going to be focused on. You won't be focused on the gun. The whole looking and trying to make a judgment off of that, not going to happen. Right. Because you're going to be too focused on everything else. And we've seen it in a lot of like John's videos where the person's tapping and racking, tapping and racking, tapping and racking. Go watch a competition. Right. Go watch a competition where you have all these shooters going through and they have some sort of malfunction and they're tapping and racking, or dropping mags, putting in another one and didn't clear the malfunction. Yep. And then they drop a mag, they put another one in, they still haven't cleared the malfunction. Like they repeat that mistake because they're not unconsciously confident with that. Yep. And they're focused on everything out here.
And I'm sure from the training you've done and the training you give, the more you subject the students to what I would call stress inoculation, when the real event happens, like you said, the field of vision is open. There's not as much auditory exclusion because they've already been through scenarios. You know, they may be totally different. They may be simulations or force on force, but at least there's been some stress upon them. So when the real thing happens, the chances of getting through it are much higher.
Yeah. You know, the military introduces stress inoculation much sooner. And I try to explain law enforcement too, because they have a block of time. You know, I have 8 weeks to get you from here to there. So I don't have time to break this into little cookies. Whereas with civilians, I'm not as quick to throw in the stress inoculation. I want to try and go at your pace. And so we start off with, you know, the basics, and we start building on those basics until we get all the basics really honed down. And then the stress that I try to induce is, you know, mainly movement and target selection. I don't know that I really run any of the really high speed, scare the pants off you kind of stuff, except for maybe our last class where we start doing maybe some of the room clearing and low light. You know, we'll change some stuff up at the end of the night to put a little bit of stress on you, because now you're, but still, I'm not the yell and scream behind you kind of guy.
Right. Yeah.
There's a lot of fun classes that are like that. I think it's best done with UTMs, where you actually get to do some force on force. Love that stuff. But very few people want to take it that far.
Right.
And I don't know that everybody takes that stuff as seriously as they should. They do it for the experience. They do it for the fun. Because you've probably taken some of those classes. And I'd say the classes at that level are typically 50-50. Guys that are doing it for fun and guys that are like, I'm taking every second of this serious.
And you walk into it thinking, well, I've done the shoot house, I've done some of this. And then when you get into the force on force and you have a trainer behind you jumping on your back, screaming like it's your wife, and then all of a sudden your heart rate is up, it definitely changes how you look at things. And I apply all that to the aviation world with what I do, you know, with testing. And I tell people it's like a 50% rule. Nobody's going to rise to meet the occasion. You're going to fall to like 50% of your best day. But if your training level is high, you're still going to prevail. But if you go in at where you need to be 100% and you walked in that morning at 70 because you didn't sleep or you didn't eat or you had a fight that night, and now you're at 35% of your ability, you're not stacking the odds in your favor to come out in a good outcome.
Yeah, mental preparation is key. That's one of the reasons why it's good to put yourself into some of those stressful things, to do some of the force on force classes, so that you're not experiencing violence for the first time in the actual event. You get comfortable being uncomfortable. That's one of the training methodologies that the military likes to use that I love. It's like, all right, you did it perfect. Now let's tie one arm behind your back. Let's make it rain. Let's take away that rifle. And now you have to do it with a pistol. You know, things that make it more complicated, because, you know, on that particular day, you don't know what's going to go wrong. You know, maybe you got out of the car, you're trying to help get your kids out of the car, and then, you know, it's someone closes the door and gets your fingers in the car door. That's why you need to learn to shoot left-handed. Or you get bit by a rattlesnake. You know, it's the weird stuff that happens. It's not, oh, I took a round and now I can't use my arm.
Right, exactly.
But like Officer Ed Anderson with Arizona Department of Public Safety, when he pulled up to that incident, he initially thought that it was just a vehicle rollover, and somebody out of the bush, it was his last round, struck his shoulder and rendered that whole arm useless. Now he has a level 3 retention firearm on the opposite side of his body, and this guy's already on top of him, hitting him with the butt of the pistol. So yeah, you have to train for the worst day, because there's no such thing as a good gunfight. You know, and at the same time, everybody's ever survived a gunfight will tell you, well, you know, any gunfight you walk away from was a good one.
Yeah, that's a win.
That's not what you're thinking at that time, though. You're thinking, Jesus Christ, how do I get out of this? You know? So.
Well, let's talk about not getting into it to begin with. Give us some of the things that you teach on, like Chuck Haggard teaches, you know, that crap don't look right. You know, the pre-awareness and the managing unknown contact cues that we can use to not get us to the point where we have to pull out a firearm.
Well, I guess when my wife and I first got married, this is kind of relatable. Like I was used to being raised in a house where we always watched the news. You know, 5 o'clock, didn't matter if I was watching Heathcliff, my dad would just come out and boop, there goes the channel. You know, we're watching the news. I really took that on once I was in the military, because anything that happened in the news was going to affect my life personally going forward. You know, it didn't matter what part of the world it was. It wasn't just local. It was like world news. played a big role. That's how I'm able to manage money and finances, because I can tell that the cost of this good's going to go up and the cost of that's going to change, etc. And so I talk to my students about gathering intelligence. The military does it all the time. You're gathering intelligence. What is your neighborhood going through right now? And how does that pertain to you? How will you be viewed in the public right now based on the court cases going on in Minnesota, Michigan, Florida, New York, New Jersey? You know, if you're not paying attention to what's going on into national news and your gunfights tomorrow, you might think that, you know, you're going to get a pat on the back, good jobs, and then you're going to be like blindsided by all this news coming out, calling you a racist, calling you oh, he got pulled over and he had 3 pistols and 1,000 rounds of ammunition in his truck with body armor, stockpile. You know, he had a weapon of mass destruction, the assault rifle 15 with the fully automatic single shot trigger, whatever it is, terminologies these morons use. And you're like, dude, I was just coming home from the range and I got mugged at a gas station. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. You know, I'm white, he's white. Like, where's all this coming from? Where's all this hatred coming from? Because this choice that you're making, you know, unbeknownst to you, you know, is going to follow you. Suddenly you're trying to go to work and there's news agencies waiting for you on your front lawn. And they're recording you going into your place of business. And it could be a large corporation like Coca-Cola. And now your supervisor saying, hey, Dave, why don't you just take the next couple of weeks off? You know, and those weeks turn into months of reporters waiting outside Coca-Cola, asking your employer, hey, why do you employ this murderer? Why do you do this? Why do you do that? Your kids going to school and your wife getting accosted, trying to get them out of the car. You know, they got cameras in their face. You know, you have teachers talking down to your kids about God only knows what, because they're upset with the choices and decisions the news media is portraying that you took. So, I mean, it affects you a lot more than just a case in court. You know, your local grocer, people that identify you or spot you in public, suddenly are running up to you and you know, some of them might be coming, hey, good job, man. You know, you killed that son of a bitch. Well, that language can play with you. It can play with your spouse who is undecided about whether or not you should or shouldn't have yet. You know, look at all these ignorant people coming up and congratulating you. You took a human life. Meanwhile, you're going through this emotional trauma. Like, God, you know, I really tried hard not to do this. I mean, did I do everything that Dave told me? Did I do everything John told me? I mean, did I do everything? Like, I sort of feel like there's something I missed. Like, I could have done something else. I could have gone around the other side of the car. You know, I was just there. You know, like I could have just pulled away. I could have just driven away. Why didn't I just drive away? So you're going to be wrestling with this emotional trauma, because no matter how much you prepare for it, if you've never taken a human life, you will not know how it's going to affect you. You know,
absolutely.
The freeze, fight, flight is not just in that event or moment. That trauma will follow you even afterwards, because I mean, everyone here has gotten into an argument. Somebody's challenged them verbally and they're like, whoa, I'm so sorry. You know, and you walk away. And then when you're outside the store, you're like, man, I should have said this. I should have said that. Like, you wrestle with it and it almost ruins your day or your week, thinking about the things you could have said or should have said. And we're still not talking about a violent encounter, a physical altercation, and or a deadly physical force encounter. Like, this is verbal, and we've wrestled with that. So you don't know what you don't know until you've done it. And so that's definitely the mental game. You know, as far as people say, you know, well, Dave, how do I spot that guy? Well, he's going to stand out like a sore thumb. I guarantee it. Like, if you're going to the mall, like, he's the one dude walking around in the trench coat. You know, you've got little groups of girls walking together, little groups of boys walking together, little families walking together, and there's all of a sudden there's this oddball.
Anomalies from the baseline, as they say.
Anomalies from the baseline. And you're like, ooh, what's he doing? And we've all seen him. We've all seen him. It just so happens that maybe every time we've gone before in the past, we're like, okay, that guy's weird, so we're just going to move on to the next store, right? And I want to say that for a lot of folks, you start ignoring that anomaly. Okay, like, you start being complacent, like, oh, there's another one of those weirdos, and you do what you always did, and it'll be that one day where that weirdo stands up, that one time, and maybe you're halfway on the other side of the mall and you hear shots going off. You're like, oh, let's get out of here. And you never even encounter it. It's not till later you see it on the news and it's his face, like, oh my God, that was him. That was the weirdo.
Yep.
You know, which that's a great day because you didn't have to do anything.
Right.
So you don't want to be complacent when you spot those anomalies. You always want to keep a plan in your brain. I mean, I have a Circle K across the street from my house. And for those of you who don't know in Arizona what a Circle K is, it's like a magnet for violence. It's kind of like AM/PM or 7-Eleven.
Yep.
And I live in a good neighborhood. So I'll pull in there sometimes and I'll see something and I'm just like, this is shady. So
there's a reason cops are always hanging out at Circle K's.
Right? If they're bored, you're like, hey, let's go to Circle K and see what happens, you know?
Right.
There's always action going on there. So, I mean, I've actually left Circle K. Like, I've not gotten gas. I've not gone in and gotten food. There was one night at 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't know what I was doing. But I pulled into a gas station. And I looked in my rearview mirror because I always search my surroundings. And I see this gorgeous young lady, probably 16, 17 years old. And I'm like, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Like,
that doesn't look right.
I would choke my daughter. Like,
right.
But maybe she just got done at church. And then I'm criticizing her outfit. Like, well, she shouldn't be wearing that at 2 o'clock in the morning. So she's getting gas. And there's another carload of guys who clearly are not with her getting out, and they're eyeballing her the whole way into the store. And I'm like, this isn't good. So I got out of my car and I walked up to her and I was like, hey, Lisa, how's it going? How's mom and dad doing? And she's just like, I don't know. And I get up next to her. I said, listen, these guys are looking at you shady. So I'm just going to stand here while you finish pumping your gas. And then, you know, I'll leave when you leave.
Yeah. Put on some clothes next time.
He's like, oh, thank you so much. Well, being a dad, like, I don't want to criticize her. You know, I feel it on my heart, but I'm not going to say that to her. But I'm looking down the passenger side of the car, and I notice there's this skinny $120 male.
Yeah.
With shorts and a t-shirt.
Tweaker.
Waiting in the, no, I mean, he looked like a clean cut kid, but he's waiting in the passenger seat. It's like, why aren't you out pumping gas?
Wow.
Like, if you were my daughter's boyfriend, like, this would be your last date, you know? So that's the stuff I think about is,
when my kids were growing up, we all taught them the, you know, Jeff Cooper's color code. And that was the drill when you went out to the store or Walmart or whatever. Oh, Dad, look at all these people in condition white. Or if they'd see something that didn't look right, Dad, I'm in condition yellow now because of this. And I guess shortly after the massacre in Las Vegas, my youngest son and I were doing firearms training out there, and it was New Year's Eve. And our plan was to get out of town by 5 before any craziness started. And we saw a guy walking around in a Bass Pro and didn't look right. And we both identified him. And the next thing you know, he's pulling down his sweatpants and pulling out a Ruger 44. And I said, this is the red line now. If he starts pointing in, I'm going to have to, you know, do what's required. And it turned out he was just shoplifting holsters, but he brought a loaded gun, pulled it out of his pants to try holsters to steal. But having that awareness and teaching your kids awareness of what doesn't belong, what doesn't look right, and at what point do you know, run and get away from the scene, or are you going to have to intervene to keep someone from being shot is like, unless you talk about and play those mental games, like say, it's not a decision you can make in real time without past experience.
Well, see, and I used to play those games with my kids early on when we went to the range. You know, if you see anybody doing anything unsafe, you let me know, because when I'm in the bay and I'm shooting my pistol or I'm shooting my rifle, in an indoor range, you have blinders, so you can't know. If you're in an outdoor range, you know, you're still busy focused on your target, not everything else. And so my kids were always the ones that would tap me, hey, Dad, that guy just pointed his gun at you. I'm like, are you serious? Like, oh yeah, he had a malfunction, so he went like this and he was doing it like that. And I was like, God damn it, you know. But now I had information, so it's always nice having an extra set of eyes. As they grew older, and we go out places, we came up with code words for people. You know, just like law enforcement uses 10 codes, you know, someone 666 is crazy. You know, we had our own little code system that we would use, typically cartoon characters, you know, from The Simpsons or something, to identify which character we saw while we were out in public. And, you know, and then it didn't sound, you know, hey, there's a Bart over there by the shoes, or, you know, there's a Lisa over there by the whatever. That let us know, oh, okay, I'm going to keep my eye on that. So there's lots of ways that you can get your kids involved, but it starts teaching them, you know, target recognition. is really what you're doing. You're teaching target recognition. You know, who's a threat and why are they a threat? You know, nobody told me when I was little that criminals are everyday people, that they look like everyone else. And so I made a big point of telling that to my kids. Like, I hate to say it, but you can't trust anybody.
Yeah, that's true.
If you look at child pedophile criminals, they commit their crimes over 500 times before they get caught. That's the national average, 500 times. I mean, there's some that have been 15, 25, 100 times before they got caught, but the national average is 2,500 times. I mean, you look at all these criminals that do get caught with child porn, and they have terabytes of child pornography. Terabytes, okay? A typical movie takes 2 gigabytes. So think about terabytes. When someone says, oh, he's got 500 terabytes of child porn, some poor detective has to watch every minute of. And where do they go? They go to places where there's kids. So they work in daycares, they work in churches, they work in, you know, Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, Girl Scouts, you name it, like any place.
Rich environment.
That's what those folks live. So your kids have got to be constantly playing that game, that what if game, that target recognition game, you know. And I did all sorts of creepy stuff with my kids so they could identify the grooming that child pedophiles use to target kids. You know, the simple, hey, good job, pat on the back. Suddenly that hand starts getting lower and lower. Or the words of affirmation to build your character stuff that
there's definitely a grooming process there.
Soon turns into flirting. So you can't start learning this stuff at too early of an age, you know. And it's a sick world that we live in, you know.
And it's not getting any better, obviously, with everything going on right now. I don't foresee that changing, I don't think. So let's we'll get away from the doom and gloom first. Go ahead.
Well, one of my wife's things when we first got married, she's like, I hate watching the news. It's so depressing.
Right.
You know, I was like, true. Like there's parts of it, especially because they form a narrative with it. But think of it as, you know, the information that you're gathering, it's keeping you informed about what's going on around you. You know, when we bought our house, we didn't just buy any house. We researched the neighborhood and looked at the crimes in that neighborhood to make sure we fit in that little pocket where nothing ever happens. You know, I know my neighbors know me.
Right.
So, you know, you can't avoid it by sticking your head in the sand. You have a duty and a responsibility to protect yourself as well as your family. If you ask any mother who's interested in firearms training, you know, what got her hooked, she's probably going to tell you my kids. Like, I never thought about it until, you know, something happened where I felt like my kids were in danger, and like mama bear popped in. I was like, that was really stupid. I didn't have a gun. This is a big dude I was confronting. It's like, so now I need to learn how to use that firearm. So yeah, that's really what it boils down to. Like, I have no ambition whatsoever. If I can go through life and never have to plug somebody, that's how I want to live my life.
Yeah,
but at the same time,
that's the goal of all this, is to never have to do it.
I don't want that day to come and my performance be substandard, and I live long enough to hear what happens to my family, their cries for help, and I'm useless in that moment.
Yeah. Well, that's why those of us in the aviation world, that's why there's simulator training. That's why we do emergency procedures over and over and over for something that probably will never happen. But if it does, that's not the day to learn about it.
Yeah.
So let's jump into a couple things. If you wanted to save money, save a student of yours money before they come to your class, what are your suggestions? Because I see people come with literally bags full of crap, and then I have to tell them, we're throwing this away, we're throwing this away, I'm sorry, you can't use this. So give them Dave's rules before you come to a DCS class.
Well, the first one is remember that this is a journey, not a destination.
Yep.
Like, if you get your CCW, like, you're not done. If you're able to pass the Arizona police officer standardized test, you're not done. That's a basic minimum qualification. Like, it's a nice goal to have, but that's not undone. So pace yourself. Don't be worried about having to run out and get the next latest and greatest, whatever. Maybe contact the instructor that you want to train with first, so you can get an idea for their personality, their understanding, because the more I know about my students and their overall goals, the better I can plan your training for you.
Yep.
Rather than you just show up as a no-name,
right, and
try to take a class. So typically that's how we start the classes, finding out who everybody is, what their goals are, so I can help them achieve those goals. Don't be in a hurry to buy a gun. If you don't know which gun to buy, or you don't know how to properly size one to you, then with me anyway, sign up for the basic pistol class, contact me, let me know that you don't have a firearm, so that I'll bring out my chest of guns and we'll try some on for size and give you some marketing or some knowledge to know what you're looking for when you go to the store.
Right.
Because you'll never hear me tell a student, "Oh, go buy a Glock or go buy a Springfield," or
right.
I'm more interested in you understanding the buttons, knobs, and levers and using that knowledge to now make a good choice for yourself.
Right.
That usually works out best. And that's going to change in time. Don't settle into the idea that you're going to be training with that one forever. You'll grow into other stuff as you become more proficient. So be prepared for the change, embrace the change. Maybe set up a budget if it's that important to you. If budget is an issue, establish a budget. Decide how much you want to spend on training the firearm and the ammunition for that year, what it's going to take. And, it's a little tougher than a gym membership. Gym membership's $10 a month. You just show up and, you can push all the weights around, but you probably won't lose any weight. You probably won't gain any strength. You might want to hire a personal trainer.
Right.
It's kind of the same thing, or you end up having a physical injury that prevents you from being able to go to the gym for a year because of something you did while you were in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
It's like race car driving. I don't go out and buy a NASCAR to drive to and from work. Right. There's purpose, there's intent behind the vehicles we drive. You'll never see me in a Prius.
Roger that. Dry practice. That's one thing that's often overlooked. People, they're talking about cost of ammo, but if you want to develop that unconscious competence, as you talked about with your draw stroke or the first press, dry practice, what do you tell folks about that?
Well, I'm a big proponent. And my boys are the ones that actually showed me a lot of the advancements in airsoft that, years ago that was gimmicky Nerf gun kind of thing. And nowadays there's so much advancements in airsoft that I can go down to the airsoft store we have here locally, and they have a massive, it looks like a gun store. I mean, the kids coming in and out with their costumes, like I almost drew on. I was like, whoa, what are you doing here? Why is there a SWAT team outside the airsoft? Oh, those are kids, badges and patches and everything. But so I have a Glock 19, a Glock 17. My son has a CZ. We have a couple of AR M4 style carbines, and I have a massive backyard. So I have a complete steel, paper, cover concealment. I have my own airsoft shooting course in my backyard.
Oh, wow.
That me and the boys can practice room clearing. We can practice team fundamentals, transitions, and everything works with our normal gear. So it's not like there's a bunch of changeover.
Right.
The accuracy is phenomenal. I can shoot my pistol at 25 feet on 1-inch squares accurately. The AR I can shoot across my yard, which is about 25 yards or more, and shoot 6-inch groups on center mass. And when it runs empty, my Glock 19 holds 15 rounds. My airsoft holds 15 pellets. When it goes empty, it goes to slide lock. So it does everything that a real pistol can do. And so I think that's been like my latest and greatest, funnest thing. I like a lot of the apps and stuff that you have a laser in your pistol, or you can use your SIRT pistol that it can communicate with. I like that stuff. And it's great for rainy or snowy days.
Right.
But if I can get outdoors, I think that's one of the things I really like about shooting is I like to be outdoors.
That's good for the mental health to get outside.
Yeah, you just have that fresh air going on. You got noise and maybe music playing or whatever. I can blast my boombox in my backyard, and people are thinking I'm having a pool party, and I'm actually running and gunning. So that's you can do that. 5-10 minutes a night. I tell folks all the time, I think 5 minutes a night is about 30 hours of practice a year. So 10 minutes puts you at 60. And if you want to keep your skills fresh and relevant, then you have to spend that time. You're investing in yourself. You've invested all this money in tools, equipment, and training, and ammo, and all this other sort of stuff. So if you're only doing one class every 6 months, what are you doing for the others? What are you doing for every 6 months?
Right.
So find time to develop those skills, and know which drills you're going to do, know what it is you're looking to improve or perfect, and and then your paper should be telling you whether or not you're improving or not. Your time on your time clock should tell you whether or not you're improving or not. So if you ever find yourself stale or stagnant, figure out what it is specific you want to work on and find the instructor that's most competent or qualified in that subject matter. You know, I already know if I want to go faster, I'm going to go talk to Tim Herron.
Yeah, for sure.
If I want to be more tactical, if I run into a problem with something I'm doing in a vehicle, I'm probably going to go jump into Travis Haley or Adam Winch with Defenders USA.
Right.
If competition, Tyler Bowman, and I had a great time getting to meet him.
Riley, you mean?
Yeah, Riley. Yeah.
Bowman. Riley's turned into an insane robot. I've watching his progression over like the last 18 months is just like, and yeah. He credits a lot of that to dry practice, you know, during the whole COVID thing.
I've got a friend who is a grandmaster, Matt Messino. He was one of my instructors. He just recently moved to Tennessee, and he was somebody who showed me some of the stuff that he does. I mean, you're right here, and you're just going to grab the magazine. That's all the further you go. You go straight back, and I mean, just that one technique right there. And then from there, you bring the magazine up, and then from there, you bring the magazine all the way in and hit the slide. And he would do that for hours. That's all he would do for hours, is a broken down segment of actions, to where you get a consistent release every single time from the magazine. You're holding it the right angle, so you're not shaking it when you're on the range.
Yep.
And I was amazed at how much time he dedicated to just that. And then you run into some of these airsoft dudes, and that's exactly what they do, especially in China where they can't own firearms. They spend hours and hours at home doing dry fire with their airsoft. And there was a gentleman that came over here just a couple of years ago and met with an instructor to shoot live guns for the first time in his entire life. He's in his 20s. And they went over, you know, basic functions of the firearm, showed him some basic drills, and then had him run a competition. And he beat the dude that was training him. Because the muscle memory is the exact same. But the only difference is now he's using live ammo instead of pellets. But I mean, that just goes to show and proves, you know, that the dry fire is absolutely relevant to what you do in a live fire range.
Myelinating the neural pathways, as they taught us in our instructor classes. Yeah. Automaticity, or yeah, definitely. Well, tell folks how to get a hold of you. We have a lot of Iowans, and I'm in Arizona right now as we tape this, in fact, and we all migrate to get out of the sub-zero temperatures. How do we get a hold of Dave and learn about your classes?
Well, you can visit us at www.dcs.training. You can also check us out on Facebook at Dynamic Combative Solutions. We're on Instagram as DCS_training. And yeah, feel free to reach out. We're kind of taking a hiatus, I think January and February. We'll probably be gearing back up again in March, because recently I've been doing some private security contracting. And honestly just need a break. The last 2 years have been so busy that I'm actually enjoying, hey, nothing going on this week.
That's good.
But yeah, I love meeting new people. I love working with new folks. And, you know, I do this because I'm passionate about it. I have fun doing it. And like I said, I tell everybody, you know, it's a journey, not a destination. So it's fun.
Well, I appreciate what you do. I've watched your passion over the years. I watched you with my own offspring up in Kansas at the ASK National Conference. And just, I mean, you think of the quality of the instructors who come up and volunteer their time and ammunition and staff, vehicles to help support that effort up there. So good people to be around, that's for sure.
Yeah, you cheated. You already brought kids that knew how to shoot. So there wasn't really a whole lot that I did with those guys. That was impressive to watch them perform.
But just the incremental things, like just tiny adjustments in your grip or the space that you had in there that maybe we hadn't ever noticed. You know, I made changes just based on what you told me. So old dogs can still learn, and I appreciate that.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us, and look forward to talking to you again. And hopefully we'll actually see each other face to face or out on the range here sometime in the near future. So thank you very much for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You bet. Take care.